We are at the point now where we are ready to put together the step 1 and step 2 and finish out problems using the quadratic formula. So just as a review, after we have determined that we have a quadratic equation, the first thing that we want to do is set the equation equal to 0, and then we want to identify the A, the B, and the C. After doing that, we want to use those values that we have determined in the first step to calculate our discriminant. Remember, our discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. It's the part of the quadratic formula that is underneath the radical. That discriminant number is either going to come out to be positive, 0, or negative. If it comes out to be positive, what we will see is that we will have a equation that has 2 solutions. If this discriminant number comes out to be 0, we will have a quadratic equation with 1 solution. Both of these scenarios here tell me I must continue on and continue to find out where the x values are using the complete quadratic formula, which we will practice on the next screen. Our third possibility with the discriminant is that it is negative. If it is negative, then that means that we do not have any real solutions. We don't have a crossover or a touch on the x-axis. And that means I can stop at this point and just say no solution. Right? So now we're going to talk about problems that fall into one of these 2 categories and how we deal with those. All right, so our first example here, I automatically notice that it is quadratic because it has to the second power, and I notice it is not set equal to 0. So I'm going to need to do that first. And so I'll have 2x squared plus 11x, and I'll take this minus 4 and move it over, and it will become positive 4. I'm then going to identify that my a value is 2, that my b value is 11, and that my c value is 4. And then I'm going to use that to calculate the discriminant. So I'm going to substitute in 11 squared minus 4 times 2 times 8. Okay, so either calculator or just work this problem out here. And what we're finding is that our discriminant number I'm going to change something real quick here. My C value should be a 4. And that is going to give me a discriminant of 89. Now, since that discriminant is positive, then that tells me I need to keep going and I need to find out where are the 2 solutions. I know I have 2 solutions, but where are they? So this is where I'm going to start my quadratic formula. Now, we might have this written down. If we don't, I'm going to write it up here. Notice that I left this blank because this is where the discriminant goes in. And so now I'm going to substitute in. My x values are equal to the opposite of b. And if b is 11, that's a negative 11. plus or minus the square root of, I don't need to recalculate this. I know what this is. It's 89. Divided by 2 times a. Our a value is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Now, this is my answer to the quadratic formula. What I want to make sure of is that this number here cannot be simplified. So if we take the square root of 89 and check, it does not have any perfect square factors. So I cannot simplify that, but that is one thing I do need to check for. Now, I would need to look at my answers, how I'm to leave my answers. This is what we call either radical form or exact form. But what I could do is, if I needed to find my approximate so that I was going to be able to graph this, I can turn this into 2 calculator problems. I would take negative 11 plus the square root of 89 and divide it by 4. That would give me where my one x-intercept is. And then my other x-intercept would be negative 11 minus the square root of 89 divided by 4. Okay, that's how we would figure it out if we wanted to approximate it using our calculator. Okay, for purposes of our Canvas quiz, our answers are left in this format. All right, let's try another one together. So this one is negative 8x squared minus 11x minus 6. So I do notice this is a quadratic, and I do notice it's set equal to 0. So I am ready to identify that A is negative 8, that B is negative 11, and that C is negative 6. And so therefore, I'm now ready to figure out the discriminant. And when I substitute in, remember that negative 11 squared, negative times negative, is going to end up to a positive 121. And like we've talked about before, we can either do this all on our calculator, or we could do it mental math, or step by step, whatever we prefer. And what we're going to see is that our discriminant number ends up to be negative. If our discriminant ends up to be negative, we have just found that there is no solution. If there's no place that it crosses over the x-axis, I stop at this point and just say no solution. I don't need to continue on with the quadratic formula. Let's look at one more example. So we have 4x squared plus x minus 5 equals 0. I see that it is quadratic, and I see that it's set equal to 0. I'm ready to identify that A is 4, that B is 1, and that C is negative 5. I will then calculate the discriminant. One squared minus 4 times A, which is 4, times C, which is negative 5. And I get 81. Since that is positive, that means I need to continue. I know that there's going to be 2 solutions, so I'm going to continue on with the quadratic formula to find where those x's are. Where are they crossing over the x-axis? So it's x is equal to the opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which we already know here is 81, and then divided by 2 times a. So the opposite of b is 1, the opposite is -1. Plus or minus. Now here's where we see something a little bit different. This was not only positive, but this 81 is a perfect square. And so we're going to be able to take the square root of 81, which is 9, divided by 2 times a. And a is 4. 2 times 4 would be 8. Now, when we have our discriminant that's a perfect square, we are going to continue on and find our 2 answers. So I'm going to take this and break this into 2 parts. Okay? Our first part is going to be x is equal to -1 plus 9 divided by 8. So I'm going to be doing this part of this. So I'm going to have x equals -1 plus 9 is going to give us a positive 8. And 8 divided by 8 will give us x is equal to 1. And so over here, we're going to do the second part. X is equal to -1. Now I'm going to do the minus. Minus 9 divided by 8. That's going to give us a -10 divided by 8, which is going to give us a -5/4. Now what that tells us is that at x equal 1, right here, and x equals a -5/4, which would be -1 1/4, so between -1 and 2, those are where our x-intercepts are, where the parabola crosses over the x-axis. What you may notice as we go into next week and look at all of our different types of solving is that if our discriminant is a perfect square, this problem could have been done by factoring. And so you're going to see that if you would have noticed at the beginning that this problem factored, and if you are good at factoring where the a value doesn't equal 1, that may be an option for you. So that's where we're going to transition to next week, is looking at problems and determining which method to use.